For 1,460 days, the ocean had kept its secret. 4 years. 4 years since the water had swallowed Jack Callahan's world whole, leaving behind nothing but a cold, empty space where his daughter used to be. Every morning, Jack would descend into that same silent blue-green world, a ghost haunting the seabed, his own personal purgatory. His dive light would cut through the gloom, sweeping over twisted kelp and shifting sands, searching for a sign, a fragment, anything to prove that his daughter, Mia, had ever been there at all. Above, his small boat, the Sea Warden, bobbed on the gentle swells. Below, the only sound was the rhythmic hiss of his regulator and the rush of his own bubbles escaping toward a surface he no longer cared for. He was a master diver, owner of a successful company, a man who knew the currents and contours of Crescent Bay better than the lines on his own weathered hands. But all that knowledge had been useless. It hadn't saved Mia, and in 4 years, it hadn't found her, Mia Callahan. At 19, she was a whisper on the wind, a rising star in the grueling world of open water swimming. She had just qualified for the Olympic team, a prodigy of discipline and raw talent. Jack had been her shadow, her guardian, following her in his boat during her punishing 4-mile training swims, from the pier to Pelican's Reach and back. But in the months before she vanished, she had begun to push for independence. "Dad, I need to do this myself," she'd insisted. "Wait for me at the dock. I'll be fine." He'd reluctantly agreed, a knot of worry tightening in his gut every time she swam out of sight. Then came the day she didn't swim back. The search had been frantic, then desperate, then hopeless. They found nothing, no bright swim cap, no goggles, not a single trace. The official conclusion was the one that tore Jack apart every single day. A tragic drowning. The ocean claims swimmers, even the best. But Jack refused to believe it, not without proof. So he dove, day after day, year after year. He searched, driven by a father's primal need to bring his child home. On this particular morning, a restless instinct had pushed him farther out than usual past his normal search grid. His oxygen was running low when he finally surfaced, realizing with a jolt that he had drifted a dangerous distance from his boat. Exhausted, his muscles burning, he spotted a lone buoy bobbing nearby, one he didn't recognize. It wasn't the blue water buoy Mia used. This one was older, rustier, farther out. Gratefully, he swam to it, clinging to its corroded frame to catch his breath. And that's when he saw it. Strapped to the buoy's central column, just above the waterline, was a device, a small, dark object held in place by weathered straps. Curiosity overriding his exhaustion, Jack hauled himself onto the buoy's platform. He carefully unstrapped the object. It was a GoPro camera in a heavy-duty waterproof housing, barnacles clinging to its edges. It was a high-end model, the kind designed for deep-sea use, the kind he had bought for Mia. "What a coincidence," he murmured, his voice hoarse. But as he turned the case over in his trembling hands, his heart seized. There, faded but unmistakable, was a small blue dolphin sticker. Beneath it were 2 letters, MC Mia Callahan. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a miracle. This was Mia's camera. With fumbling, shaking fingers, Jack forced the latches on the waterproof case. Inside, the GoPro was pristine. The battery was dead, but the device itself was perfect. He remembered the day he gave it to her. "Take this with you," he'd insisted. "Record your sessions. I want to see your progress." She'd rolled her eyes in that way only a teenager can, but she'd taken it. "Okay, Dad, if it makes you feel better." 4 years of emptiness, of cold silence, and now, this. A tiny electronic key that might unlock the ocean's final terrible secret. Clutching the camera as if it were a holy relic, Jack swam back to his boat, a new, terrifying energy surging through him. He had found something, and he was about to find out what really happened to his daughter. Jack's hands were still trembling as he guided the sea warden back to the harbor. He called his old friend and diving companion, who'd been waiting on deck, explaining he had to rush off. Then, still in his damp clothes, he gripped his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Detective Morgan speaking," the gruff voice answered. "It's Jack Callahan," Jack said, his own voice tight with a mixture of hope and dread. "I found something. I found Mia's GoPro." A stunned silence on the other end. "After all this time? Where? Strapped to a buoy miles from her route? It might have the footage from that day." Detective Morgan, frustrated by his own schedule, couldn't meet immediately. He instructed Jack to drop the camera at the station, where a forensic tech would be waiting. He promised to meet him later, after a charity event Jack had foolishly promised to speak at. The world felt like it was moving in slow motion, but Jack knew he had to follow procedure. This was evidence now. 20 minutes later, Jack was in a sterile tech lab at the Crescent Bay police station. A young analyst named Ethan Parker took the camera with professional solemnity. "The memory card looks intact," Ethan said, his voice calm. "No major corrosion. Let's see what we've got." As Ethan inserted the card into a reader, Jack held his breath. The first video file opened, and Jack's knees almost gave out. It was Mia, alive. Smiling into the lens, her wet hair slicked back, the ocean sparkling behind her. "Testing, testing." Her voice, clear and vibrant, filled the small room. "Perfect spot to capture my training today." The footage showed her securing the camera to the buoy, her movements confident. Then she was treading water, speaking to the lens as if it were a diary. "Day 42 of Olympic training," she said, slightly out of breath. "Coach says my endurance is improving, but my turns still need work." Her expression turned serious, a shadow passing over her bright features. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this. The pressure is intense. If I even make it to the games, will I just embarrass myself?" Jack's throat constricted. He never knew she felt this way, that beneath her fierce determination lay this vulnerability. As she continued to speak, her gaze suddenly shifted off camera. "Oh, hello," she called out, a surprised smile on her face. A young man swam into the frame. The water-spotted lens obscured his full face, but his friendly voice was clear. "Hey there," he said. "Didn't expect to see anyone else out this far." "Just training," Mia replied. "I'm Mia." "Martin," the young man said. "You're really pushing it, swimming way out here alone." "I'm training for the Olympics," Mia explained. "Open water." "No way! That's amazing!" Martin sounded genuinely impressed. "Are you going to be famous?" Mia laughed, a sound that was like a knife in Jack's heart. "Hardly. I'm new to the elite level. Haven't made a big media splash yet. Still flying under the radar." "Well, you look like a pro to me," Martin said with a charming grin. "Hey, want a race? Just for fun?" Mia agreed, her competitive spirit sparked. They swam out of frame, and for the next 30 minutes, the camera recorded nothing but the empty, swaying ocean. Then a speedboat crossed the frame in the distance. The fisheye lens made it look far away, but Jack leaned in, his eyes narrowed. On the hull was a logo. "Can you enhance that?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ethan zoomed in. The image was blurry, but a stylized wave and some text were just visible. "Ocean Elite Marine," Ethan read. "A local company. They provide boats and equipment for water sports." Jack's mind flashed back to the marina that morning. He'd seen that same logo on several boats. The video continued, but Mia never returned. Hours of empty ocean passed until the battery died, leaving Jack staring at a black screen, the silence in the room now heavier than ever. After 4 years of nothing, he had a face, or part of one, and a name. Martin. and Ocean Elite Marine. Jack left the station with his mind racing, a sliver of terrifying hope cutting through his grief. He had to get to the charity event, but his speech about water safety felt like a cruel joke. He was a man drowning on dry land. The event hall was buzzing, a world away from the cold reality of the tech lab. Jack delivered his speech on autopilot, his words about resilience tasting like ash in his mouth. Afterward, he sat with old friends, former swimmers, who clapped him on the back. He couldn't hold it in. He told them about the camera, the footage, the boat logo. Ocean Elite Marine? His friend Tom said, leaning closer. They sponsor some of the new Olympic program athletes. They weren't around in our day. In fact, he added, pointing across the hall, they have a booth right over there. Jack's head snapped around. A sleek display stood against the far wall, emblazoned with the very logo from the video. 2 men in polo shirts manned the booth. Excusing himself, Jack walked towards them, his heart hammering against his ribs. He approached casually, asking about their sponsorship program. Then he dropped the question. Do you know someone named Martin associated with your company? The reaction was instantaneous. The friendly smiles vanished. The 2 men exchanged a nervous, fleeting glance. Martin, the older one repeated. We have a few employees with that name. Do you have a last name? Jack shook his head and pulled out his phone, showing them the screenshot of their boat. I'm trying to identify this boat, and a young man named Martin who might have been using it 4 years ago. Panic flashed in their eyes. I'm not sure, the younger one stammered. We have a large fleet. You should speak with the staff at the marina, the older one added quickly, his voice strained. We just handle marketing. As Jack walked away, he glanced back. The younger man was on his phone, pacing anxiously. Within moments, they were packing up their booth, rushing to leave. A primal instinct screamed at Jack. He had to follow them. He rushed for the exit, brushing past the event organizer, who tried to stop him for his closing speech. Family emergency, he said, not breaking his stride. He reached the parking lot just as the 2 men were loading their van. As it pulled out, Jack started his car, the chase beginning before he even knew what he was looking for. He was no longer just a grieving father. He was a hunter, and he was closing in on his prey. The Ocean Elite Marine van led Jack on a winding path away from the city, down a narrow, unmarked road that ended at a dilapidated, abandoned marina. This was no corporate facility. It was a ghost town of rusted docks and decaying buildings. Jack parked his car out of sight and crept forward on foot, his diver's stealth serving him well. He watched as the 2 men from the event met with 3 others. Then a large speedboat roared up to the dock. We need to move quickly, one of the newcomers barked. The boss is waiting on the yacht, and he's not happy. Jack's blood ran cold. The boss? He ducked behind a stack of old fuel barrels as guards began to patrol the perimeter. From his hiding spot, he heard another vehicle arrive, followed by the sound of women whimpering. Get in the boat, a harsh voice commanded. Keep your heads down and stay quiet. Please, a young woman's voice pleaded softly. We've done everything you asked. Shut up and move! The sound of footsteps on the dock, the rumble of the boat's engine firing to life. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. He desperately wanted to see if Mia was among them, but he was trapped. As the speedboat faded into the distance, he overheard 2 of the remaining men talking. How could this happen? One said, his voice laced with fear. They've been safe for 4 years, and now the police start sniffing around. The boss is going ballistic, the other replied. Said if we don't clean this up, we'll be joining those guys from last year at the bottom of the channel. 4 years. The words echoed in Jack's mind. They were talking about Mia. She hadn't drowned. She'd been taken, held captive this entire time. The horrifying truth crashed over him, a tsunami of rage and terror. With shaking hands, he called Detective Morgan. "I'm at an abandoned marina," he said, his voice urgent. "I just witnessed a human trafficking operation. Ocean Elite Marine. They have my daughter." "Stay where you are, Jack," Morgan ordered. "No! They're moving her. They're taking them to a yacht offshore. Meet me at the main marina. We have to go now." The Crescent Bay Marina was a blur of organized chaos. Police boats, a Coast Guard vessel, tactical officers. Jack, fueled by adrenaline, briefed them on what he'd seen. A harbor patrol officer confirmed it. A crossover boat was heading for the Channel Islands, a maze of coves perfect for hiding a yacht. "I'm coming with you," Jack insisted, overriding Morgan's protests. "I know those waters. If Mia is on that yacht, I need to be there." They sped out of the harbor, the ocean spray stinging Jack's face. A helicopter thundered overhead, their eye in the sky. An hour later, the call came. "Air Unit 1, we've spotted a large yacht. The crossover is approaching it now." As they neared the location, Jack saw it through his binoculars. A sleek, white yacht, a symbol of obscene wealth. He watched as 3 women were escorted from the crossover onto the yacht and taken below deck. Was one of them Mia? The thought was agony. Suddenly, the yacht's engines roared to life. "They've spotted us!" the captain yelled. The crossover boat detached and sped directly towards them, 2 men on its deck armed with rifles. Gunfire erupted across the water. As chaos exploded, the helicopter radioed in. "They're bringing the women back on deck!" "They're putting them in diving equipment." "They're going to put them in the water!" Jack shouted, a new wave of terror washing over him. "There are underwater caves all through here. If they get in those caves, we'll lose them forever." While the police boats engaged the crossover in a firefight, Jack saw the figures on the yacht leaping overboard. In the heat of the moment, with everyone distracted, he made his choice. He grabbed a mask, fins, and a spare breathing apparatus. No tank, but it would have to do. He slipped over the side of the police boat and into the churning sea. The cold was a shock, but his purpose was singular. He swam with the strength of a desperate father, the yacht his only destination. He had to get to Mia. He pulled himself onto the yacht's swimming platform, his body screaming in protest. On the dive deck, he found a rack of spear guns. He grabbed one, turning to go back to the water, when a voice stopped him cold. "Don't move." It was Martin, drunk, swaying, a handgun held loosely in his grip. "You're her father," he slurred. "The diver guy." "Why?" Jack demanded, his voice a low growl. "Why did you take her?" "For my father," Martin mumbled, his eyes filled with a pathetic mix of resentment and fear. He loves athletic young women. He could make her successful." "Martin, what the hell are you doing?" A sharp, cold voice cut through the air. An older man, immaculately dressed, stepped onto the deck, a gun held with chilling confidence. The family resemblance was unmistakable. This was the boss. "You useless whelp!" the man snarled at his son. He then turned his dead eyes on Jack. "You're the diver father, aren't you? Your search ends here." He raised his gun. In the split second that followed, 2 shots rang out as one. Martin, in a final act of drunken rebellion, fired at his father. Simultaneously, Jack fired the spear gun. The spear missed its target in the open air, embedding itself in Martin's shoulder. The father crumpled to the deck. As Martin stared in shock at his father's body, Jack felt a searing pain in his own leg. The old man had gotten a shot off. Bleeding and in agony, Jack dove back into the ocean. He had to get to Mia. Underwater, the scene was a chaotic ballet of violence. Police divers fought with the kidnappers, who were still handcuffed to the women. Through the maelstrom of bubbles, Jack saw her. Mia. Fighting, struggling. He swam towards her, his strength failing, a trail of his own blood marking his path. A kidnapper raised a spear gun, aiming it at Jack. But just as he fired, a police diver tackled him from behind. The spear hissed past Jack's ear. He reached Mia, tore the regulator from her captor's mouth, and together with the officer, they finally overpowered him, cutting the cuffs that had bound her for 4 years. His vision tunneled. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Mia's face, her eyes wide with disbelief, reaching for him through the water. He awoke on a stretcher, the rhythmic beeping of monitors in his ears. "Mia!" he croaked. "Dad, I'm here." She was there, at his side, a blanket draped over her shoulders. She was thin, her eyes haunted, but she was alive. "You found me!" she wept, clinging to his hand. "I never stopped looking," he whispered back. The story spilled out. The kidnapping, the 4 years of captivity in a remote estate, the psychological torture. The boss, Grant Whitmore, had used her as a trophy, threatening Jack's life to ensure her compliance. Today, fearing exposure after Jack's questions at the booth, Whitmore had been moving his captives when their raid began. As the paramedics loaded him into an ambulance, Jack looked at his daughter. She stood on the dock, surrounded by flashing lights, but she stood tall, a survivor. He had gone into the ocean that morning a broken man, searching for a ghost. He was leaving it with a wounded body, but a whole heart. The long night was over. Against all odds, he had brought his daughter home. The healing would be long and difficult, but they would face it, as they always had, together.